Hi there, Paige here from the Impact Copywriter and the Sales Funnel Shop. And today we're going to talk about a problem that if you're a business owner doing direct sales for your company, a problem that you face. And this one's really for freelancers, for service providers, and for coaches. So anyone who's doing kind of these kind of one-on-one direct sales. And that problem is people ghosting you or leads falling through the cracks and opportunities not moving forward. So today, we're going to talk about how we can use systems or a specific part of systems that I use to kind of help you drive more projects forward. Now, if you've been doing direct sales for any length of time, you know that there are so many opportunities where people can kind of fall through the cracks. After they first reach out to you, after you send a scheduling link, after you send a contract, anytime during the negotiation process, after you send an invoice, even after they've become a client and you need materials to start your project. So before even the start date of that project, and along the entire length of kind of your project life cycle. So there are so many ways where people and opportunities can just kind of fall through the cracks and kind of halt the progress of your project or that opportunity. So, that's a problem because in most cases, people aren't getting enough leads, and so you want to maximize, the outcome of the leads that you do get. And so, one simple technique that I use in my prospecting system to make sure that no one ever falls through the cracks, at least not in any way that I can control, and that is with scheduled reminders, scheduled check-ins, and scheduled follow-ups. And I'm going to show you kind of what that means, and we're going to look at some scenarios, and I'm kind of just going to show you some simple examples of how I would schedule those check-ins, reminders, and follow-ups in certain scenarios in a prospecting situation. So let's hop on into my demo board here, and we'll get started with that. All right, so our goal is to use a system in a way that drives the project forward. And we're just going to talk about, there's lots of ways that I do this in my pipeline and how I do prospecting and in the system itself. But today we're just going to talk about the one way. So those scheduled check-ins, reminders, and follow-ups. All right, so let's look at before I jump into the situations, you can see here that this is kind of my demo board, so that's why it's empty. But let's say a new lead came in, maybe they reach out to us via email or whatnot, and we'll say this lead's name is Jenny J. So we have a task created for her, and this is going to be her task, where we're going to store all the information, all the steps we need to follow, all the notes that we take about her project or whatnot. It's going to be stored in this task until she becomes a project, and then she'll get moved to a client board. Most likely, that's how it happens in my system, at least. And so our first scenario, let's say that Jeannie has reached out to us about a project. We've determined, based on her form responses, if you're doing kind of a screening form, that she's a decent fit on the surface level at least, and we're willing to talk with her. So we've sent her a link to book a call, or maybe we've sent her an email with some options, depending on kind of what your prospecting process looks like. But, days, weeks go by, she never responds and she never books. So she has effectively fallen through the cracks. So instead, we could schedule a check-in that reminds us to check in with ourselves to see if that action has been taken, and if not, tells us what to do next. So here's how I would probably do it. So let's say that I sent her a scheduling link via email, and let's say that was yesterday. Okay, so yesterday when I do that action and I know I need her to take a specific action, I am going to go ahead and schedule a check-in. So I'm going to schedule a check-in, something like scheduled. And then if not, what am I going to do? So something like scheduled, if not, send a reminder email. So I will schedule this for probably like 3 days, 3 or 4 days. So if that was yesterday, then 3 business days would be Monday. And I'll assign it to myself. So the reason I schedule it and assign it to myself is because it will show up on my calendar. Let's see. You'll see here, it'll show up on my calendar there we go, on Monday, automatically. So when I'm working, from my calendar or from my list in my task dashboard, once I've scheduled that, then I don't have to worry about it. Asana's going to remind me to do that. And then I can go into that and take action and then update my task list. So that is an easy way to keep following up with people at least a few times to make sure that, inboxes are busy, that your email didn't get seen, or she was so busy that she completely forgot about it. So we're, giving people the benefit of the doubt that it's not about us, that they don't necessarily want to work with us. It's just that they're busy and they have 100 other things vying for their attention. And so we do as much as we can to make sure that we maximize the opportunity or maximize the chance that an opportunity that looks like a good fit will move forward. All right, let's go back to our task here. All right, let's go ahead and mark that. Let's just delete these. All right, now scenario number 2. So let's say we did talk to Jenny, and she looks like a good fit. Once we understand the details of her project or of whatever that relationship is that you're discussing, if you're a coach, for example. But she's not ready to start yet. She really thinks that we should circle back in about 2 months. But now it's 4 months later and you haven't heard from her. And so she has effectively fallen through the cracks, right? So instead, on the day that we talked to Jenny, and she said, I think it's best if we circle back in 2 months. After that call, after we hang up, we're actually going to go into our system and we're going to schedule a check-in to make sure that we check in if she doesn't check in first, right? So let's say it's after the call. And so she says, it's best we circle back in 2 months. And I'm going to use something like check in with Jeannie in 2 months. And I might even put like about what, ready to move forward. And then I would schedule that. So 2 months. So we'd say August, September 25th. That would be exactly 2 months, right? And I want to remember to assign it to myself and schedule it so that it shows up in my task dashboard. So once I've scheduled it, I don't really have to worry about it until 2 months later, right? So in 2 months from now, we'll actually go in, we'll see our task here, and we'll do that activity, and then we'll decide what's our next step. All right, so let's clean our task here. And scenario number 3, so let's say we have actually, Jenny decided to move forward. We've sent her a statement of work or a contract, and it's set to expire in 7 days. So once we send it, it expires 7 days later, the terms of that contract. Now, that's something I use. So whatever that is for you, if it's 14 days, 30 days, or whatnot. But let's say 7. So let's say, in this situation without a system, day 7 hits and Jeannie hasn't signed the contract and she hasn't even maybe opened the contract. If you're using a software where you can measure kind of analytics, like something like Better Proposals, which is what I use, and you're feeling like all that effort that you've put into this relationship was wasted because the contract was never signed. So she didn't become a client. So she has effectively fallen through the cracks, right? So instead, if we use a more systemized approach, on the day you send the contract, you're going to schedule maybe 2 different reminders. If you have a short window, like 7 days, if you have a longer window, you might schedule more reminders. But this is what it might look like for a 7-day window. So we sent the contract today. So I'm going to mark that as finished. We'll say that was already on there. and that was today. And we know that it expires in 7 days. So we're going to schedule 2 reminders. So in 3 days, we're going to say, actually, I'm going to name it like this. So signed. If not, send an email, something like questions. Any questions? And so I'm going to actually schedule that for about midway, so that I can answer any questions before the 11th hour, right? So if I schedule that for the day before, then the proposal is going to expire if she does have questions. So it makes more sense to schedule it, 3 days later. So we'll do that. So 7 days would be the first. We'll do that for Monday, and I'll assign it to me so that I know if I send it today, on Monday, I'm going to check to see if it's signed. Because if it's signed, I don't have to do any follow-up action, right? I'll just move to the next step in my prospecting process, which is, for me, sending the invoice. But if it's not signed, then I have to do a follow-up action. And so I usually send an email to ask if they had any questions about the terms of the contract or the terms of the statement of work. And if they do, then let's discuss those, and get any kind of lingering hesitations out of the way. So if she signed, we can mark this as complete, and we wouldn't have to do our follow-up action. But if she doesn't, then we're going to have to jump to our next follow-up action. All right, and then we're going to also schedule a reminder for the day before. Because if it's still not signed the day before, I do like to send a reminder email to say, hey, the contract is expiring tomorrow. The terms of the contract are expiring tomorrow. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, so that we can make sure that it doesn't, and we can get your project moving forward, or better if you use language that's connected to that outcome. So we can get started doing X for your business, whatever outcome that they're looking for. So I might, put some kind of cue for myself, signed, question mark. If not, send a reminder email around the topic of expiring. And that would be the day before the project expires. So then, now that it's assigned to myself and it's scheduled, it's going to pop up on my task dashboard on the day that it's due. And I'm going to take care of that and increase the odds that contract actually gets signed and she doesn't fall through the cracks, right? And there are more reminders you can use in this situation. Even after a proposal is expired or a contract is expired, you can reach out and figure out, what's holding them back. So you can continue to schedule these kinds of follow-up actions, throughout the relationship or the discussion or negotiation that you're having. All right. So let's clear these. And we have one more scenario. So scenario 4 is we're starting a new project on September 1st. So let's say Jeannie decided to move forward. And this is more of a client management scenario than it is a prospecting scenario. So we're starting a new project on September 1st. So there are some things that we need from Jeannie. We need her to send us some things before we can move forward and get started. So as a copywriter, I have to collect things for research. As a service provider, you probably also need to do that. As a coach, you may need to do that as well. And those, those materials are due on that start date because that's when the research starts. So we hit September 1st and we don't have any materials from Jenny, from our client, and it ends up delaying our project maybe for 2 extra weeks. And if you didn't, factor that into your pricing, then as a service provider, you're kind of out that money, right? It's a terrible place to be in. So we want our projects to be on time with the timelines that we set for them. So she's not necessarily falling through the cracks, but the project's been delayed and it's costing you money. So instead, we're going to use a more systemized approach like we've been using so far, and we're going to schedule some reminders before that start date and to check in to make sure that we've sent those materials. All right, so what might that look like? So let's say our project is starting on September 1st, like we discussed. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule the start date. Okay, so technically September 2nd because the 1st is a Sunday. So let's say September 2nd. And that's actually a holiday, but we're just going to ignore that for now. And so maybe 1 month before. So I like to do a 1 month before and a 2 weeks before. So 1 month before. So if we're starting on, so let's do the 5th to do it on a Monday. That's approximately like 1 month before. And then 2 weeks before the project starts, let me just leave it blank for now. 2 weeks before the project starts, Monday. So that'd be about the 19th, right? Let me go ahead and assign those to me. So 1 month before, I'm going to do something like materials received. So these are going to be very, very similar. Technically, this is also a reminder email. So basically, I'm just going to check in with myself, and then check in with her if she hasn't taken the actions that I need to start her project on time. So 1 month before, and you can customize this depending on how much you need. So if you have a lot of materials I have to collect and it's going to take a bit of time, then checking in a month before makes a lot of sense. But if they only need to send you maybe like one document and all they have to do is go find it on their computer, then maybe checking in 1 month before is unnecessary. Maybe you just need to check in 2 weeks before and then maybe 1 week before to make sure that that's been done. So 1 month before, I'm going to check in with myself. Have materials been received? If not, I'm going to send a reminder email and make sure that she understands that we really want to start the project on time. I just want to remind you that to have these materials kind of in whatever folder or whatever those instructions are by the project start date. I might check again. So I'm going to check again in 2 weeks to see if those materials are received. So let's say they weren't. So I'm going to make sure that I do that again in 2 weeks to see if all the materials are received. And then if not, I'm going to send another reminder email. And then let's say in 2 weeks before they weren't there. So I'm going to send another reminder. So this is kind of how you have to adapt it. So as you see, things haven't been done, then you might have to make other decisions on extra check-ins and extra follow-ups. So 2 weeks before, she didn't have those. So I'm going to schedule something the week before. So I think that last one was on the 19th. And this is Anne. A reminder email. All right, so then we would have a very similar task, and it would, with a similar purpose. So materials received. If not, send another reminder email. And we would probably keep doing this on certain intervals until the project start date. And, at this point, when it's so close to the project start date, I have certain clauses in my contract that say if I don't have what I need, within a certain period, then your project goes on pause. And then there's certain actions that happen. So if excessive delays might actually put a project on pause and other projects, so that it doesn't affect timelines for projects that have already been scheduled behind that project. So it's not a great situation to be in. So I want to make sure that's clear that, hey, we definitely need these because we don't want the project to go on pause because it may not be able to restart immediately, right? So our goal is to make sure the project starts on time, and we want them to understand that they also want the project to start on time, and that's what we need. So that's something that we can do through those check-ins and reminders and the content that we actually send in the email. So that's kind of the final situation. And so just to wrap up, Scheduling reminders, check-ins, and follow-ups like this can really help you move opportunities forward and increase the chance that more of the leads that come in to your world become clients. So they're really, really helpful when you take actions that require someone else to do something in return. So, like you've seen, when you send a scheduling link and it requires them to schedule, or you send an invoice and it requires them to pay, or you send a statement of work and it requires them to sign, or you've had your consult call and you need them to send you some materials before you can really scope out a project. So these situations in where you do something, or you need them to do something to follow that up before the project or the opportunity can move forward. That's really where these are most helpful. And you can use these in all kinds of systems. So not just prospecting, but if you're doing something like cold pitching, or you're reaching out to podcasts to try to get featured, or you're pitching guest posts or whatnot, you can use these reminders, check-ins, and follow-ups and schedule those to help those kind of opportunities also move forward. So by using these scheduled check-ins, reminders, and follow-ups like this, like I've showed you in this video, you can take back more control over the process, over your pipeline, and increase the odds that the person you're trying to work with will do what you need them to do.